started with this story here about Donald Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about the difference between illusion versus reality, right? So Donald Trump made this statement that he is not going to add Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley to his cabinet. Listen to this. I will not be inviting former Ambassador Nikki Haley or former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to join the Trump administration, which is currently in formation. I very much enjoyed and appreciated working with them previously and would like to thank them for their service to our country. Make America great again, he said there. Well, let's dive into illusion. Several people saw that, and it gave them this illusion that because he was not hiring Mike Pompeo or Nikki Haley, that this meant that he was going to move forward with an anti-war position and that he was not going to have warmongers or neocons a part of his administration. Well, you can imagine the meltdown when people saw the announcement that came later. And this is why I say there's a difference between illusion versus reality. Now, after that announcement, you'll see here's Donald Trump Jr. here. He's responding to Dave Smith. Dave Smith, libertarian, great on Israel, Gaza, and anti-war activism. But at some point, it seems like Dave decided to say, okay, well, Trump would be a better option. So listen to this. Dave Smith said, the Stop Pompeo movement is great, but it's not enough. Right now, we need maximum pressure to keep all neocons and war hawks out of the Trump administration. They have had their time at the table and brought nothing but disaster to the world and this country. So he was responding to Donald Trump Jr. in a previous tweet there. And so Donald Trump Jr. retweeted this and he said, agreed, 100, 100, 100, I'm on it. So that's interesting. So Donald Trump Jr. agreed with Dave Smith and said that he was on it. I'm on it. I'm the man. I'm on it. But apparently, regardless of what he may have wanted, that is not what Donald Trump wanted. Because in the place of Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley, one of the people he decided to appoint is Elise Stefanik. Do you all remember her? Remember during the college protests, she became very popular because she was the one that was attacking college presidents. She was calling them anti-Semitic. She was against the campus protests. She's very much Zionist. She's a rabid Zionist. And she takes a lot of money from AIPAC, almost $1 million. So it says Trump has selected rabid Zionist Representative Elise Stefanik as the next UN ambassador. So he has given her that position. Yeah. Gus says, disappointing, another Zionist. Yep. Oh, we get to what? We ain't even get done yet. We're not even done yet. So it shows you here again, Trump offers Elise Stefanik the role of the UN ambassador. And you can see how much money she is taking from AIPAC, almost $1 million, right? So again, like I said, who funds you, runs you. So obviously Elise is not going to push anything that goes against the state of Israel. And she is very, 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 very pro-Israel. In fact, I want you to hear a statement from her here, because I would argue that Elise is one of those politicians that is willing to put Israel first, not Americans first. And you'll see that in this video clip here. Shout out to Breakthrough News for this one. If Trump pick for UN ambassador ever loses the job, perhaps she can become Israel's ambassador instead. Elise Stefanik declared to the Knesset this year that U.S. taxpayers must arm Israel without conditions, and there is no excuse. Listen to this. I'll let you hear it yourself.
As long as I serve the American people, I will defend George Washington's vision of religious pluralism and freedom. Today, this means crushing anti-Semitism at home and supplying the state of Israel with what it needs, when it needs it, without conditions to achieve total victory in the face of evil.
Pause. Let me explain to you what she means by crushing anti-Semitism. Now, Elise is one of those politicians that believes that anti-Zionism is also anti-Semitism. So that right there lets you know she's going to be very much once again, heavily against the protest, any protest against Israel. And by the way, it is totally legal to protest against the government of Israel. She's going to be very much against that once again. I would not be surprised if she tries to crack down in such a way where she goes to such extent in this country to make it so that anti-Zionism will also be defined as anti-Semitism, which would mean that you would not be allowed to criticize the government of Israel. Everyone's got to walk with me here, because the reality is Netanyahu is Zionist. The Likud party is Zionist. The government of Israel is Zionist. So do you see what they've been trying to do? Now, she's not alone. Chuck Schumer wanted to do this too. Chuck Schumer was also trying to say anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. He was trying to say they're linked the same. So both parties have been trying to push this narrative. But with her, it's definitely going to be more pronounced. So just keep that in mind.
Chants of death to America are not hollow slogans. They are a promise that what happened here on October 7th could happen in the United States unless Hamas and its jihadist accomplices are eliminated. And it is the United States' high honor and high responsibility to support Israel's effort. I have been clear at home, and I will be clear here. There is no excuse for an American president to block aid to Israel, aid that was duly passed by the Congress. For years, I have been a leading proponent and partner to President Trump in his historic support for Israeli independence and security, including moving the U.S. Embassy to its rightful place in Jerusalem. Israel is indeed a miracle, an outpost of freedom, of Western values, of civilization, a striking example of human potential, the physical embodiment of Herzl's maxim, if you will it, it is no dream. It's the same founding ethos that we prize in America, the American dream.
So that is Elise Stefanik. Again, like I said, she's a rabid Zionist. Like, if you guys thought Richie Torres was over the top, she is even more over the top. So that is where we are now with the UN ambassador position. And that is very concerning. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you guys. But again, she is willing to put Israel first. And we always got to push back on that. These people who tell you that they are America first. Anytime I see you willingly say that nothing should be cut off from Israel, regardless if it's taxpayer money or not, that we should give them everything that they need, you are willing to put Israel first. You're not willing to put Americans first. You don't see Elise Stefanik have this same type of passion about Americans having health care in this country. You don't see Elise Stefanik having the same type of passion about people having a living wage in this country. So she goes harder for Israel than she does for people at home. Same thing with Richie Torres. I hardly ever hear Richie Torres talk about the Bronx. I hardly ever hear him talk about what people need in the Bronx. He's mainly talking about what Israel needs. You have to understand, when these politicians go that route, they are heavily funded by the Israeli lobby, and you cannot overlook that. Cannot overlook it. Now, it's not just this, though. Not just Miss Elise Stefanik. We got the warmongers of all warmongers and neocons, and that is Marco Rubio. Donald Trump wants to appoint Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. That's Antony Blinken's position. Now, make no mistake, Antony Blinken is also a warmonger. Antony Blinken also has sat by knowing that Israel was blocking aid and food from getting into Gaza and knew this all the time and pretended like he didn't. By the way, they're still blocking aid. They haven't allowed aid to get into Gaza since October 1st. And I'm painting this comparison between the two because I want you to realize that both of these parties, regardless of who would have won, regardless if it was Kamala, regardless if it's Donald Trump, both of them would have been on Israel's side. Both of them would have had a Secretary of State that was pro-Israel and supported Israel. Kamala Harris was running around with Liz Cheney, another warmonger, another neocon. So it's important that we say that. Now, the problem with Marco Rubio, we'll get into in just a second, but I want to show you the hypocrisy of Marco Rubio, because you see, video lives forever. And in 2016, Marco Rubio was singing a different tune, a much different tune about Donald Trump. This is when Marco Rubio was running for president. So I want to remind you what he said about Donald Trump back then.
The stakes are giving control of the party of Lincoln and Reagan, of the conservative movement, and ultimately of the United States over to a con artist. That will not happen. I make this promise to you today. I will do whatever it takes. I will campaign as long as it takes. I will stay in this race as long as it takes. Donald Trump, a con artist, will never get control of this party. And the time has come for you. I know some of your friends have bought into this. Listen, friends, don't let friends vote for con artists. It is time to open our eyes. It is time to open our eyes. We cannot allow a con artist to get access to the nuclear codes of the United States of America. It's a big fraud. And it's time to open our eyes, and we will in the days and weeks to come. I'm confident of it.
Yeah, and Marco, you were also a big fraud. Now, there was Marco Rubio 2016 calling Donald Trump a con artist. Of course, at that time, he was running for president. But my question to Marco Rubio, if you think Donald Trump's a con artist, then what does that say about you if you're willing to work with him? What does that say about Marco Rubio? You know, it's just interesting how people, all of a sudden, they all just get in line. They get in line. And you can see this here. Let me share with Hotspot, thank you so much. Just in, meet Trump's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. And I'm going to show you just how cringe Marco Rubio is. Number one, again, AIPAC. He's receiving over $1 million from the Israeli lobby. You already know where he's at. You already know he's a warmonger. He's a neocon. And you can see some of that here with Code Pink.
Senator Rubio, will you call for ceasefire?
No, I will not.
Gaza?
On the contrary.
Rubio,
are you filming it?
Wait,
so I want you guys to get this. I want them to destroy every element of Hamas they can get their hands on. These people are vicious animals who did horrifying crimes. And I hope you guys post that.
And what about the civilians that are being killed every day?
Hamas should stop hiding behind civilians, putting civilians in the way. Hamas knew that this was going to lead to this. So Hamas should stop building their military installations underneath hospitals.
So you don't care that 15,000 have died? You don't care about the babies that are being killed every day?
I think it's horrifying. I think it's terrible. And I think Hamas is 100% to blame. That's what I think. Make sure you post.
Look at this, right? Very, you know, the ego, right? The nerve of this guy.
That, please.
He said, make sure you post that, please. Marco Rubio. I always thought that Marco Rubio looked like Zach Morris and Slater from Saved by the Bell had a baby. I see it every time. Anytime I see a picture of Marco Rubio, it's weird. I know, really weird. But even Rand Paul, years ago, Rand Paul called out Marco Rubio. Now, Rand Paul ain't great on everything either, right? And I have a bone to pick sometimes with the libertarians, because I'm like, if you're libertarian, you're part of the third party, you should be supporting your third party candidate. But I sometimes it's getting in line with whoever the Republican candidate is going to be. I never understood that. And sometimes Rand Paul has done that, right? Just like Bernie Sanders, who's supposed to be a registered independent, has backed the Democratic Party instead of holding the line. So sometimes you need to hold the line. But Rand Paul did warn us about Marco Rubio. Now, this is years ago, an interview with Jake Tapper. Check this out.
How do you view Hillary Clinton in terms of her foreign policy views?
I see her as a neoconservative. I see her I see her and Rubio as being the same person. They both want a no-fly zone. They both have supported activity in Libya. the war in Libya that toppled Gaddafi, an intervention that made us less safe. They both have supported pouring arms into the Syrian civil war, a mistake that I think allowed ISIS to grow stronger. And they both have supported the Iraq war. So, I mean, what's the difference?
So Hillary Clinton and Marco Rubio are the same person. How do you define a neoconservative?
Somebody a lot of times who believes in big government, both domestically and internationally. And so many of the big neoconservatives came out of a movement. They were Democrats mostly. They were some Marxists and socialists, but they were people who ultimately came to believe that we needed a big government involved internationally as well. So a neoconservative often is a big government person for domestic policy and a big government person for internationalism, foreign war.
How do you view Hillary Clinton in terms of her foreign policy views?
So that is Rand Paul with Jake Tapper years ago comparing Marco Rubio to Hillary Clinton, and he said that they're both neocons. Now, Rand Paul, this is someone who caucuses with the Republican Party. Even he was willing to call out Marco Rubio. We're talking about the same guy, Marco Rubio. We're talking about the guy who backed the coups in Venezuela, wants to go to war with Iran. Hello? Straight up warmonger, neocon, like he's like one of the worst of the worst. So there was this illusion that because Donald Trump did not select Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley, that he was not going to select any warmongers or neocons to be a part of his party. And here's the thing. Even Tulsi Gabbard, who actually wanted that position, that Secretary of State position was what Tulsi Gabbard wanted. So there's something there. Even Tulsi Gabbard, who joined the Trump coalition, left the Democratic Party, announced that she joined the Republican Party. Even Tulsi Gabbard, in her recent interview with Megyn Kelly, explains why Marco Rubio would not be a good idea for Donald Trump. Listen to this.
I think it would be a huge mistake for President Trump to choose him because he represents the neocon warmongering establishment of Washington, D.C., which stands diametrically opposed to the very policies that President Trump has always stood for, going all the way back to when he ran for president in 2016 through that first term in office, and the things that he's talking about wanting to do now. And it would send the wrong message to a lot of folks who are very concerned about the fact that we are on the brink of war with Russia and China and Iran and North Korea. If Marco Rubio is his vice president, then that is what we will face, and it will cause a lot of people to question what kind of foreign policy will actually be executed. Will it be the one that Trump wants and stands for, or will it be one that will continue the deep state neocon warmongers who've gotten us into the mess that we are in now? I think.
So that was during the time when it was a possibility that he would be considered as Trump's VP. So that was even Tulsi Gabbard giving her opinion about Marco Rubio, right? And Tulsi Gabbard, again, she says that she's anti-war, but at the end of the day, as we saw with Israel, everybody's anti-war until it's Israel, right? Everyone's anti-war until it's Israel. So once Israel was in the picture, we saw, oh, no. Now all of a sudden she was tweeting, give Israel what they need. Let's help them, da-da-da. Yeah, of course not. Also, when you change the country to China too, you'll see that she's not really anti-war. So what people need to pay attention to is that when you look at the illusion compared to reality, the reality is Donald Trump is doing the same thing that he did when he was president in 2016. He is appointing people that are pro-Israel, that are taking money from the Israeli lobby, people who are warmongers. Again, doesn't have to be Pompeo, doesn't have to be Nikki Haley. He's still appointed warmongers, and he's still appointed people that are neocons. So I want you to think about that if you care about foreign policy. And to that point, this idea that either one of these parties is going to be good on war, it is an illusion. It's not true because they're both owned and controlled by the military industrial complex. Now, a number of people will ask me, well, now that you're seeing some of Trump's appointees, do you regret voting for Jill Stein? Hells no. No, I will never regret voting outside of the two-party system. Never, one in a million. And you need to also understand that even if Kamala Harris won, she also would have warmongers and neocons as a part of her cabinet. Everybody needs to remember, and shout out to JB for calling this out as well. Either way, we were going to get Marco Rubio or Liz Cheney. This is why both parties must be abandoned. This is the reality, ladies and gentlemen. Because it's true. For all the people on Twitter right now saying, oh, I bet you guys feel bad that you didn't vote for Kamala. No, because she was she was with Liz Cheney. She was getting endorsements from Dick Cheney. She was backed by the Israeli lobby. Do I think that Kamala Harris's cabinet would have been anti-war? Hells no. She told you to your face that she would not support an arms embargo to Israel. She was going to continue to give Israel what they needed as well. Do not fall for that. But for those who were convinced that Donald Trump was anti-war, I continue to tell you on the show, he was not anti-war. And for those who said, well, he didn't start any new wars, I continued to tell you that he implemented coups in Venezuela, that he bombed Syria. It was interesting to me how all of a sudden nobody remembered he bombed Syria. You know, just stuff like that. He didn't stop any wars. He didn't end any wars. So there's that. And he's been very vocal about what he would do to help Israel. So I think that what has happened is that because the party that used to be good on issues like war, on issues that affect the working class, because that party became the party of Wall Street and the military industrial complex and the Ivy League lawyers, that people have developed this idea that they now have to run to the other party, that the other party is now the party that is anti-war, even though a lot of us lived through Trump's presidency in 2016, and we know that's not the case. So we just have to make this very clear, folks. I do not want you to go into 2025 thinking that we are going to have this anti-war presidency. I'm not here for that. I'm not here for audience capture. I'm not going to sit up here and make you think that Donald Trump is this anti-war person. I'll continue to tell you that that is not true. I want to prepare you, though. I want you to really be prepared for what is to come. Look at his appointments right now. Trump's key appointments so far: Senator Marco Rubio, Secretary of State; Governor Kristi Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security. That's the dog woman, guys. Remember the dog lady? That's who that is. You can go on and see Representative Elise Stefanik, UN Ambassador; Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff; former Representative Lee Zeldin, EPA Administrator; Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. Stephen Miller, a big Zionist. Representative Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor. Tom Homan, Border Czar. And here are the people, and this is what's interesting. All of these people are still waiting, right? Key figures awaiting appointment: Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Mike Pompeo, Mike Lee, Tom Cotton. So this is Trump's cabinet thus far. So in the end, what you have is a pro-war, pro-Israel cabinet. There's no getting around that. You have one corporate party. That's really what you have. And I saw people freaking out on social media. They're like, oh my God, what is he doing? I thought he was anti-war and da-da-da. So it's unfortunate that he was able to convince people that he was, but he's not. And you can just tell by the appointments. Remember, who funds you runs you. 2025, I know I said this for 2024. 2025 is going to be wild. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.